Okay, guys, Dang and Moto and updating their page on the weekend. Don't they know that's when teachers do all their work? But I'm going to keep this edition really short. I'd added in some Baroque art that I took out that we'll talk about in class to save you some time since you have less time to watch it now. So hopefully you got caught up in your Merriam reading and you got a chance to read Unit 1.3, Primary Sources Packet number 3 with the Counter Reformation or Catholic Reformation readings. So this is going to be about what the Catholics do, what their reaction is to the Protestant Reformation or their fight against um, the Protestants taking all of their members, and so what their reaction is going to do. So it comes by two different names because of two different views. Uh, the Catholic Reformation would be more of what the Catholics would see. It's like, oh, we were already reforming this stuff. Like Moore and Erasmus would have said, we were already trying to get rid of abuses, but didn't want doctrinal changes, that they were just trying to get rid of some of the abuses in the church. Moore and Erasmus trying to change from within. But you see the Counter Reformation be kind of what the Protestants would say, that it's like a Reformation in reaction to their Reformation. So just kind of two different views there you want to take note of. And so with the Catholic Reformation, they're going to say, the Catholics anyway, that they are going to have an oratory or a discussion of divine love. And there's going to be a group of priests, actually, they're going to take part in this, that want to kind of go back and live like Jesus' disciples and restore the holiness to the church. And the guy who is actually advisor to this oratory of divine love is Pope Paul III, pictured here. He is the Pope who excommunicated Henry VIII. He is a humanist and an astrologer, so however that fits with being a pope. But it's going to stand with this Reformation that only the Catholic Church can interpret the Bible. So that's really going to be their stance against the Protestant Reformation, is we still hold that holiness to interpret the Bible. And so Pope Paul III is going to be the most important pope in reforming the church and challenging Protestantism. And he is going to do this through an action of what's called reaffirmation. And so this is a different term. We've had Reformation, which means to reform or change. Pope Paul and the Catholic Reformation is going to reaffirm or keep some things, and then they'll have a couple reforms. And this is just really a response to the gains of the Protestant critics within the church. And so we'll go step by step here, but what you need to know about Pope Paul III is, rather than instituting new doctrines, he's seeking to improve church discipline through existing doctrines. So reaffirming or keeping what's within the church, just getting rid of abuses. And so the Catholic Reformation was both a response to the gains of Protestantism and the response to critics within the church that abuses need to be reformed. And so how they're going to do this is through the Council of Trent. So there will be 3 sessions of the Council of Trent from 1545 to 1563, and it is going to establish the Catholic dogma or beliefs for the next 4 centuries, so 400 years. So we'll see up until the 1960s, which we'll get to in April, hopefully, of this year, will be when the next big doctrinal changes or dogma changes, belief changes will take place. But what the Council of Trent is going to decide, that each is the equal validity of Scripture, church traditions, and writings of the church fathers. So all 3 of these things are equal, where we saw in Protestantism that it is going to be the Bible and faith alone that is the premise. The church is going to reaffirm that there's equal validity. The scriptures, the Bible, church traditions and practices, such as the sacraments, and the writings of church fathers, such as the popes and priests and things, are all equal. We're also going to see that they're going to reaffirm that salvation can only come by both good works and faith. So that is saying, no, Protestants, you're wrong. It's not faith alone. It takes both. They're going to reaffirm all 7 sacraments and say that they are all valid. Transubstantiation, or the power of the priest in performing the communion, is reaffirmed. So where Luther and Calvin said, like the priest isn't needed for this, as we're going to see with Calvin, that it was just figurative in its action. The church is going to say no. The priest has the power, and only the priest has the power to perform the communion and other sacraments. We're going to see that monasticism and celibacy of clergy and purgatory will also be reaffirmed, as well as veneration of the saints, so worship of the saints. Wine will be withheld at this time from laymen or from people not within the church. This won't be changed until the 1960s, and we'll talk about why in April when we get to the changes that take place then. We're also going to see that the Council of Trent is going to improve the index of forbidden books. And so books that supported Protestantism or that were overly critical of the church, even Erasmus's work, were going to be banned from Catholic countries, and anyone possessing these books listed in the index could be severely punished. And so we're going back to that, the church has the right to interpret scriptures and write, and that anything that is not explicitly given by the church is prohibited. So books definitely on the top of that list would be things such as Calvin's work, Luther's work, all of those pamphlets. The reforms, so those are all things that are reaffirmed. The reforms that the church are going to make are the abuses and sale of indulgences are going to be curtailed. The sale of church offices is going to be curtailed, so that simony. Bishops are going to be given greater control over clergy to keep those naughty priests in order. Seminaries are going to be developed to train priests. So remember when we talked about those priests that were illiterate and didn't really know what they were preaching and were even trading sexual favors for forgiveness, they're going to turn to education, such as seminaries. There's still a seminary in St. Louis, I believe. So training these church officials and what the actual beliefs of the church are. And so then out of this as well are going to be new religious orders created. So how do you implement your Reformation? That is going to be through these religious orders who are going to be created, which is sort of ironic because they had criticized Protestantism for all of these new religions, but they're going to create these new religious orders. So it's kind of like what Protestants did, but it's reaffirming the Catholic Church. So the three goals of these new religious orders are going to be to reform the church through education. So they're going to use education, which is very humanistic, to fix the problem. So that people don't want to leave the church, that they're educated from a young age, so that they don't falter and go Protestant. We're also going to see the second goal is to spread the gospel to pagan people, so bring to the New World, which we're going to get to talk about the New World and expansion. So they might have been losing followers in Europe, but they're going to build a whole bunch of followers in South America and North America, as we're going to see. And their third and final goal is to fight Protestantism. And this is where we're going to have an important individual here, Ignatius Loyola. He's going to live from 1491 to 1556, and he's going to be the founder of the Jesuits. He had been a soldier, a little bit of background knowledge on him, and he had been hurt and fighting, and he is going to actually recuperate and be praying in a cave, even practicing some flagellation like we studied before, but he feels like very unequal in his faith, like a sinner, and he is going to decide that the only way is to be a soldier for Christ. And this is his way to react and to come back. And so he's going to found the Jesuits, and because of his soldier experience, he's going to organize them in a very military fashion. And he is going to write what is called spiritual exercises, and it is his guidebook that is used to train the Jesuits on how to be effective in combating the heresy of Protestantism. So I always like to talk about it as like combating. I mean, he was a soldier. It was very militaristic, the formation of the Jesuits. So beginning in 1542, the Jesuits are going to oversee both the Spanish and Italian Inquisition. So we've already talked about the Spanish Inquisition. There's going to be an additional Inquisition in Italy. But in Spain, this persecution of the Moriscos, the Christian Moors, and Christian Jews who had said that they had converted, to save their lives, they're actually going to hold, like trials or inquisitions, suspecting that these peoples are backsliding into their original faith. and not true members of the Christendom. In Italy, we'll actually see Pope Paul IV issue a papal bull accusing Jews of killing Christ and ordering that Jews be placed in ghettos in the papal states. And we're going to see the persecution of Jews throughout Europe is going to increase as a result of the Jesuits in the Inquisition. But what's important to note is that the Jesuits were successful in some ways in helping the Catholic Church near to Rome. So they're successful near to Rome where the church is in control. We're not going to see as much in Northern Europe where Protestantism is taking root, but their biggest success is going to be in schools. Education is their primary focus. If you're educated, like we learn the pledge when you're a kid and that's indoctrinated in you, if you educate these children on being good Catholics when they're young, they won't stray. And so their success was in their schools. Like Notre Dame and Boston College and several other schools, actual Jesuit schools here in the United States. You can see the success of the Catholic Reformation in places like North America and South America. We're going to see that those female nun orders that we talked about with the effect of the Reformation on women are going to be used for education, and that, the women are going to be responsible for training kids to be good Catholics, and if you raise them in the right way, then they won't leave that faith. And so the Catholic Reformation is going to succeed in bringing southern Germany and Eastern Europe back to Catholicism. 1542, the Roman Inquisition is established in the Papal States. The Index of Forbidden Books was strongly enforced, and heresy was effectively ended in the Papal States. So that's that area in the middle of Italy that we talked about. But the rest of Italy is not going to be affected significantly. Jesuit schools will become among the finest in all of Europe. And so definitely education being a key theme there. And so our last little segment here before we get to the effects of the Reformation are going to be in Baroque art. Like I said, we'll focus more on this in class. But art, again, having an importance just like it did in the Renaissance. Baroque art, as a part of the Catholic Reformation, began in Catholic Reformation countries to teach in a concrete and emotional way and demonstrate the glory and power of the Catholic Church. Art began to have a big role in the Catholic Reformation. It was encouraged by the papacy and the Jesuits, prominent in France, Flanders, Austria, southern Germany, and Poland, and spread later to even some of our Protestant countries, such as the Netherlands and northern Germany and England. It sought to overwhelm the viewer, which is the number one thing I want you to get from it, is that it sought to overwhelm. It was supposed to be like, oh, I am Catholic. Look how cool the art is that we created. That's my church. And you can be illiterate and still understand art. So that's kind of a point there too. It emphasized grandeur, emotion, movement, spaciousness, and unity surrounding a certain theme. So architecture and sculpture counts as art here. As you saw flashing here, and I'll get back to my slide went a little bit faster than I meant, Baroque architecture is going to reflect the image and power of absolute monarchs in the Catholic Church. So as we get to our new monarchies and absolute monarchs as well, you're going to see that Baroque art is going to be taken from a church theme, where it represents the power of the church, very much to being like, ooh, I'm going to use that to represent my power. So thinking about like Versailles and Louis XIV that we're going to get to, Baroque art, very important. And Gian Lorenzo Bernini is our number one architect of Baroque art, and he is going to personify Baroque architecture and sculpture. So here's the colonnade for Piazza in the front of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and it's his greatest architectural achievement. I mean, look at that. You're like, oh, the Catholic Church is awesome. Like just walking up to that. This is Baroque art. It's sought to overwhelm you. It's grand in scale. It's grand and picturesque. And here's a slide that went too fast, and here it is, like as if you were walking in there. So just the grandeur, the beauty, you associate this with your church. Like I want to stay Catholic, not Protestant, and this is exemplary of that church. He's also going to sculpt the incredible canopy over the high altar of St. Peter's Cathedral. So here's that canopy. You can see the beautiful ornateness, the grandeur, just how tall that is. I mean, you're seeing those people there at the very bottom, and just the like breathtakingness of this, and that it represented the Catholic Church. He's also going to create his altarpiece sculpture. So there's another view. Oops, I forgot I had two images. Took lots of pictures here. And so just the grandeur, you're going to see the altarpieces here, and we're going to look at one specifically, my favorite altarpiece sculpture, the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, which evokes tremendous emotion. So here you see it from afar, like look at the beams of light coming down, and this is the church, and this is the emotion that you would feel, and then looking at the face of Saint Teresa, just wow, like yeah, you're meant to feel emotional here, and meant to evoke tremendous emotion. He also gives us, and one of my favorite Davids, although I'm still a big fan of Donatello's David, is Bernini's David. So you can see it shows movement and emotion, so there's action and emotion to this biblical story, more than just, the contrapposto stance that we saw of Michelangelo and Donatello's David. And so this is one of my favorite as well, like in the action, so meant to evoke emotion for this story. He's also going to construct several fountains throughout Rome. We're going to see Baroque painting in class, and we're also going to see Baroque painting in Unit 3.1, so I won't spend a lot of time here. But characteristics of the painting very much similar to the architecture and sculpture. It stressed broad areas of light and shadow rather than on linear arrangements of the High Renaissance. Color is going to become an important element as it appealed to the senses and more true to nature. Not concerned with clarity of details, as it's more the overall dynamic effect and designed to give a spontaneous personal experience. So Caravaggio is a Roman painter, perhaps the #1 most important painter of the Baroque era. He depicted highly emotional scenes and used sharp contrast of light and dark to create drama, which is called tenebrism. And he's criticized by some, however, for using ordinary people as models for his depiction of biblical scenes. And so he does get some flack for that, because it's just like normal people off the street in biblical scenes. And then we're going to see Peter Paul Rubens, who's a Flemish painter and worked much for the Habsburg court in Brussels, which is the capital of Spanish Netherlands. He's also going to emphasize color and sensuality, animated figures, and melodramatic contrast. His works were monumental in size. Nearly half of his works dealt with Christian subjects, however, so of course very important to the Catholic Reformation. But he's also known for his sensual nudes as Roman goddesses, water nymphs, and saints, as well as angels. And so we will going to look at a really great PowerPoint of some Baroque art, and even some Khan Academy when we come back to class. And then we're going to pick up in class with the results of the Reformation, really talk about why we've been talking about all of this, and your mnemonic study device, as well as our essential questions when we come back into class, and then we'll be ready for the Wars of Religion. Thanks for hanging in and waiting for this lecture. See you on Wednesday.